Welcome to this episode on the Health and Happiness Show, where it's my mission to change your mindset so that you can live a healthy and happier life. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's go. Hey guys, Ollie here, and welcome back to another episode on the Health and Happiness Show, where today I want to talk about the weighing scales and how we must improve our relationship with them if we are to improve our mental well-being, aka our mindset. Now, this is a pressing issue and one which seems to become more and more prevalent in recent weeks after a number of conversations with a few different people. The concerns being how frequently people weigh, the obsessive compulsive behavior around that, and the emotional effect that it's having on that individual after they've weighed themselves. This needs addressing. Now, I will say that this issue goes beyond the scope of this podcast and my help for you today. And certainly when we're going into the area of eating disorders in relation to scales, then that is something I cannot help you with. However, I do intend to use this podcast platform today to help you responsibly use the scales for what they're intended and designed to do. Take your weight and allow you to measure and monitor your weight loss progress on this process. I don't know when the scales were invented. I don't know who invented the scales, but they had a smart idea, because let me tell you this, by measuring your weight and by using it as a metric to measure your progress, that's really quite sensible, because it's going to allow you to understand and interpret that data to say, right, I am making progress, my weight is going down, I am nearing and reaching my targets. And I can tell you now, the scales is a tool that I encourage the students to use in the Health and Happiness Academy, along with measurements and photos. Yes, don't place all of your eggs in one basket, use a variety of eggs. You've got duck eggs, you've got goose eggs, you've got chicken eggs. See what I'm saying? Right, you get what I'm saying. Use the different measurement tools to measure your progress, because let me tell you this, the weighing scales measures your weight. It doesn't measure your body composition. What measures your body composition is body fat calipers or DEXA scans, or even how you look in the mirror. What also measures your progress is grabbing the tape measure and taking your hip and waist circumference. In addition, what am I wearing today? You'll be glad to know I'm wearing clothes, fully dressed that is, and that is a great measurement of progress on a weight loss process, because let me tell you this, I, like you, have clothes in the wardrobe which, yeah, they're a little bit uncomfortable to wear and some don't even fit. So what happens is when I eventually fit into those, hey presto, I have made progress and lost weight as a byproduct, right? But in relation to the actual scales themselves, they are a fantastic tool to use to measure your progress. Now, let's go back a step. For those on a weight loss journey who aren't measuring their progress across any of those measurements that I've just said, clothing, photos, the scales, tape measures, whatever it is, that would be my first go-to, is start measuring the progress that you're making on this process, because what gets measured gets managed. So that when a student on the academy comes to me and has a mini meltdown because they've gained half a pound, I can say, wise up, Susan, you are down 3 dress sizes, right? And it's that level of perspective there that can go a long way in actually going, all right, okay, so I have gained half a pound today, but actually my progress photos that I just took there on the weekend look considerably better, right? There are more than one ways to measure your progress, and I invite you to use each of them. However, solely today we're focusing on the scales, and that is what I want you to use, right? And look at and address, and hopefully by the end of this, improve your relationship with them. Look, the scales, similarly to your relationship with food, your relationship with the scales need working on. And similarly how we eat in relation to our emotion, i.e. both positive and negative, we also need to detach the emotion that we have when we weigh. So for example, if you weighed this morning, right, and you gained, you need to detach that emotion to the scale. It is simply your gravitational pull towards the earth. It is nothing more, it is nothing less. And it's also something you're just using to measure your progress against. Now, let me tell you the fundamental flaw, or at least one of them, right? When we weigh, we compare our progress to the day before, right? This is the mistake. If you're going to weigh every single day, which I would encourage a lot of people to do, because if you're going to have more data, then you can look at the data from a greater picture and actually start to see trends and patterns and different, habitual sort of patterns. For example, ladies with the menstrual cycle, they should be weighing every single day, similar to tracking their cycle every single day, every single month, because what happens every single month for a lady, they get their menstrual cycle and they come onto their period, and that's going to massively affect the time of the month for them in relation to the scales, right? That is key. But if they're not weighing frequently, maybe even every day, then if they weigh randomly on a Tuesday and they've just come onto their period, then that's the problem, because they're going to react in a way that believing that they failed, and they haven't failed, they've just come onto their menstrual cycle, right? This is the importance of it, and this is the power of data. And generally, similarly to how I would encourage you to track your calories and track your food every day, I would also encourage you to track your weight every day, because what gets measured gets managed. So number one, we should weigh every single day, I believe, right? And that is on the basis that you do have a relatively good relationship with the scales there. And how to create the good relationship with the scales is to detach the emotion that you're placing on the scales. You're weighing every single day. Now, I was half a pound heavier on the scales this morning. Therefore, have I gained half a pound? Well, technically yes, in relation to yesterday. However, we shouldn't read horizontally when we weigh ourselves. What we should read across is actually, what were we this time last week? What were we this time 2 weeks ago? Now, if you're not weighing every single day, that's going to be hard to answer because you don't have that data. But like myself, I weigh every single day, so I'm like, oh, I'm actually 2 pounds lighter than I was this time last week. That's amazing, right? Despite having gained half a pound. You haven't gained half a pound, right? Yes, you have technically to yesterday, but weight doesn't go down every day. Rather, body fat doesn't go down every day, but it can and will go down every single week. So if you're going to weigh, my advice is to weigh every single day, and then if you're measuring that progress in relation to the weight, do not read across, i.e. what weight were you yesterday. Read upwards in terms of what were you this time 7 days ago, what were you this time 14 days ago, what weight were you this time a month ago, what weight were you this time a year ago, right? If you've been weighing that long. That is my advice. At the time of the weigh-in is really, really important. And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong. And this is where the bad relationship starts to creep in. So if you're going to weigh every single day, right? The substitute to weigh every single day would probably be once a week at a consistent time on a consistent day, right? So maybe on a Sunday morning, right? Every single Sunday morning, maybe at 9 a.m., right? For consistency. Consistency, like with everything else, is absolutely key. So you want to be consistent in the weight front just as much as the diet and the training front, okay? But so my two options for you are weigh every single day or weigh once a week. But if you're going to weigh once a week, make sure it's the same and make sure you measure over a long enough period, because again, relating back to the menstrual cycle for the females listening, that is going to change week to week, okay? So you need to have cumulative data there over months and if not years to be able to see proper trends and patterns. But anyway, going back to the time of the weigh-in. So if you're going to weigh every day or even once a week, it doesn't matter. Ensure that you weigh ideally at the same time, but preferably every single morning upon wakening. Now, if you want to go one level deeper, weigh yourself after you've been to the toilet. That includes the number 1 and or the number 2 as well. Because I don't know about you, but I have measured my weight both before and after, and that is a transformation in and of itself. Yeah, we'll leave it with that without going too vulgar. But essentially, weigh first thing in the morning on an empty stomach and after you've been to the toilet. That there is going to give you the greatest measurement and the most accurate measurement for that day. What you're then going to do is you're going to measure that progress compared to the day that week before. So if it's Monday, you're going to compare your weight to last Monday. If it's a Friday, you're comparing your weight to last Friday, not Thursday and not Sunday, right? Do not go back a day, go back one whole week, one whole set of 7 days, because that will be the most accurate way of measuring the weight progress, right? Fantastic. So that's the frequency of when, that's the time and the when. Let me tell you something. There is absolutely zero value in weighing more than once per day. And this is where the habit and the behavior of weighing can very quickly become unhealthy. Again, I had a conversation with someone who was weighing upwards of 10 times a day. And I understand why people do this, because it's a behavioral problem and it's one that needs working on, similar to binge eating, similar to self-sabotage, right? And I asked this individual, I said, what are you looking for when you weigh yourself at 2 p.m. after lunch on a Thursday afternoon? What are you looking for? Well, you know, they said, well, to look at how much weight I've gained, how much fat has come from the food I've just eaten. But I said, it's not fat, is it? They were like, oh, isn't it? No, it's not. Like, why would it be fat, right? Because let me tell you this, you cannot gain body fat in a calorie deficit. And if you're on a weight loss journey, you should probably be in a calorie deficit, AKA a diet, AKA eating less and moving more, right? You cannot gain body fat there. So I don't know where or how or why you're looking for weight gain, or rather fat gain in a calorie deficit. It cannot happen. Now, in a calorie surplus, you can absolutely gain weight and body fat, and you probably will if you're in a calorie surplus, and then you're more likely to look at body fat gain. But if you're in a calorie deficit, those two magical fitness industry words, a calorie deficit, then you cannot be gaining weight. Like, you cannot. Even if the weight goes up, that doesn't mean you're gaining body fat. This is the differentiation. Are you gaining body fat or are you gaining weight? Well, if I drink a liter of water right here, right now, which I'm tempted to do for the sake of this podcast, but I'm not going to do, would I be heavy on the scales afterwards? Of course I will, because I've now got a liter of fluid that I didn't have in my body 5 minutes prior, right? Similarly, if I sit down to my Cheerios or my Cocoa Pops, am I going to be heavier or lighter after I've eaten the breakfast? Of course I'm going to be heavier, because I've now got all this food in my body, right? But does that mean that food's made me fat, or that weight gains come from fat? Absolutely not. It comes from the fluid and the liquid and the food properties of that food that you've just eaten, right? Like, tell me otherwise. How can it be fat? And it cannot be fat in a calorie deficit. So, okay, Ollie, I had dinner last night, and why am I 3 pounds heavier? Well, that could be for a number of reasons. Number one, were you within your calorie allowance? If you were, then I wouldn't worry about it. If the weight's still gone up, then it could be a number of things. And I would encourage you right now, as the listener, to write these down. First of all, for the females listening, it is 9 times out of 10 in relation to your menstrual cycle. If you are a female listening to this and you need more help understanding how the weight affects the scales as part of your monthly cycle, then please reach out to me after listening to this podcast, and I will send you a free training video on how to measure and monitor your menstrual cycle in relation to a fat loss journey. Female fat loss is entirely different to male fat loss. So if you're female, reach out, just casual, hey, and I'll send that your way. Let's move into the other variables that are affecting the scale from that meal the night before. The most common denominator would be the carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates are not making you fat if you're in a calorie deficit. Carbohydrates are not making you fat. Let me tell you what's happening. When you eat carbohydrates, you need to understand where that food's going. In fact, let me ask you that question right here, right now. When you eat a meal, where does that food go? Where does it go? In your stomach? Okay, fantastic. But where's it go once it's been digested in your stomach? Like, where's it go? Tell me. Where does it go? I'm asking you right now. You probably don't know. Therefore, you're assuming that once we eat the food, it's just getting stored as fat. Absolutely not. It couldn't be further from the truth, right? Fat gain coming from weight gain happens over long periods of time. I don't know about you, but I've never woken up morbidly obese, right? Like, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over months and months and years and years and decades of overeating. You cannot get overweight or quote unquote fat, which I hate that word, overnight. You just cannot do it, right? So why are you 3 pounds heavier? Well, for example, let's say you had a bowl of pasta the night before. Amazing, good choice, right? You're heavier because you now have stored glycogen in your body coming from the carbohydrates, aka the pasta, right? So when you eat that pasta is broken down into what we call glucose, right? And that glucose is stored into glycogen in the liver, in the muscle cells, in the free circulating room of the body. It's everywhere, right? Amazing. The body is doing what it was designed to do. That isn't fat gain. That is weight gain because you now have stored glycogen in the body, but that isn't fat gain. It would only be fat gain if you're in a calorie surplus and if you're excessively eating on calories, most likely coming from carbohydrates. So if you're heavier, that's because you've got stored glycogen in the body. Adding to the fact that carbohydrates are what we call an osmolyte, going back to the science days, where water binds together to the carbohydrates and then goes into the cell, you're going to be even heavier. That's why if you're dehydrated, you're light on the scales, and that's why if you're more hydrated, you're heavy on the scales. Water accumulates weight in the body. It makes logical sense. So that's my second, or technically third point. The more hydrated you are, the probably heavier you're going to be. But that's a good thing. The body's like 75% water. You need water. You need hydration. Please do not be dehydrating yourself as a weight loss tactic because let me tell you this, the more dehydrated you are, the slower your metabolism will be. Let me repeat that. The more dehydrated you are, the slower your metabolism will be. So let that be an encouragement and reason for you to drink more water today, because you're literally spinning your metabolism when you do, right? What else? Salt, sodium, same difference pretty much, right? The quantity of sodium or salt in your diet will determine how much you weigh the next day. If you deplete sodium, salt, then you're going to be lighter on the scales, right? Because again, water and sodium go hand in hand together, right? So a high salt diet will lead to greater weight, but not fat. No one is eating bags of salt and thus gaining fat gain, right? There's a lot of sodium in our food and we should always monitor our sodium for our general health. But ultimately, the higher sodium diet, the more weight you will be on the scales the next day. That's that, right? Okay, so we've got menstrual cycle. Okay, we've got carbohydrates, we've got water, and we've got salt. What else? Well, the timing of which you weigh would largely dictate things. So for example, if, like I said before, you should weigh consistently at the same time each day, if that's hypothetically 7 a.m, but on the Sunday when you have a lie-in, it's at 12 p.m, well, you're going to be lighter because you haven't eaten for as long. That makes logical sense, right? So what we can begin to understand is there are a number of variables that are contributing to that weight on the scales, not I have got fat overnight. It doesn't happen like that. And that is my reassurance to you today as part of this podcast, right? So look, I know there's a lot to consider here. So let's really strip back to the bare bones. 1, weigh every single day. If you can't weigh every single day or you don't want to weigh every single day, then weigh once per week. When you're measuring the progress based on that weight reading, look across to that day the week before, not yesterday. When you're weighing, my advice is to keep it as consistent as possible to make that measurement as accurate as possible, i.e. weigh at the same time each day or each time that you do weigh, right? Even little things such as where the scales are placed play a critical part. So for example, I had another conversation with someone this week who was going to take the scales away with them when they go away for a short break. I said, absolutely not, because it's going to serve no purpose. Because let me tell you now, I weigh in my bathroom, but some people may weigh in their kitchen, their bedroom, it doesn't matter. I would encourage you to do this, but I actually wouldn't because it will mess with your head. Is if you were to weigh in every single different location in your house, you'd be in a completely different weight in every different place of the house. Therefore, it becomes completely irrelevant. What does become relevant is weighing in the same place each day. So every day that I weigh in the bathroom. I don't move the scales, they stay in the same place, right? That creates accuracy, and that is my advice to you, okay? So we've got how frequent to weigh, we've got how to read that weight, right? When that weight goes up, it is your job and responsibility, unless you're working with a coach such as myself, to say, right, that is why my weight has gone up. I had more carbohydrates than I did yesterday. I had more sodium than I did yesterday. I had more water than I did yesterday. I have come onto my period. I have been more stressed. So we need to understand, weight just goes into so many different avenues. The higher the stress, right? The higher the cortisol in the body, the more inflammation there's going to be, and thus the heavier your weight's going to be. There's just so many avenues here. And this is why it is so important to have this understanding. And honestly, my advice is, if you don't have that understanding of the weighing scales, please educate yourself on them. Work with myself. I will teach you how to weigh yourself properly, because it's so important. 9.9 out of 10 people weigh themselves either incorrectly or they read the weight wrong. But sort of finally, please, with a cherry on top, detach the emotion that you're placing on a set of scales that is measuring your gravitational pull towards the earth. Nothing more, nothing less. And the best way to combat that emotional attachment that you have is to use a number of different measurement tools. The photos, the clothing, the tape measure, the scales, compliments, right? When people say, Ollie, you're looking fabulous. Have you lost weight? I'm like, oh my God, yes I have. I'm feeling great. I'm on this diet. I'm in the Health and Habits Academy. I'm living my best life, right? That is one of the greatest measures of progress, is when you haven't seen someone in, say, 3 months and they just complimented you on how bloody amazing that you're looking. These are the various ways, right? If you want to look at it from another perspective, if you want to talk about progress, right? The fact that you're even on a diet right now is blimmin' progression, right? Because this time last month, this time last year, you probably weren't even thinking about dieting. Or if you were, look how far you've come since then. And if you haven't, then my door is always open. My inbox is always open. You can message me at any point, and I promise I will help you, because everyone deserves 2 things in life. What do they deserve? They deserve health and they deserve happiness. So if you don't have those 2 things, let me help you with those. But if you do, or you're working towards it, then celebrate that. That is success in and of itself. It really is. But above all, use the scales responsibly. And if you can't, then don't weigh at all. Guys, I hope that helps. Until next time, stay healthy, be happy, take care.